Hello everybody, welcome back. We're doing the game of Active Directory, and this time we are looking into SMB or server message block. Nobody ever calls it that, server message block. Everybody just calls it SMB. Particularly in Windows, we're actually calling it CIFS. Nobody calls it that either. Everybody just calls it SMB. We've already been dealing with SMB, but before we go on further talking about SMB, it's good to know what we're talking about. It's good to realize what we're talking about here. If you think about why a network, especially in an office environment, is ever needed, why do you need that network? Mostly to use a printer. If you're in a network, I promise you one of the things that are going to be there sitting somewhere is a printer. So in order to access the printer, you're gonna need the SMB protocol. Also to share files. In most cases, when people are using a network, people are normally organized in teams. You're gonna get your finance people, your HR people, you're gonna get your engineers, you're gonna get your sales. You're gonna get all kinds of different groupings that usually want to work together, and those people that work together, they are usually working on the same set of files, and usually they want those files to be shared amongst one another. Okay, and this is where SMB comes in. It's an old technology. I know lately people are working in different ways, people are using cloud technologies, but there's still a great number of people that are not fully bought in, that are not fully into the cloud yet, people that are still using the old way of sharing files, and I'm talking about file servers. Yeah, I'm talking about services like that. So yeah, in any network, you will find this SMB protocol being used basically everywhere. It's quite old. I've been doing a little bit of research on the internet to find out how old it is. I found this article here that told me that actually this technology is it's from the 80s already. It's quite old. It's been around for a very long time, even long before I ever thought I'd be working with computers, even though the interest in computers have already begun. I'm actually quite shocked that even MS-DOS was able to speak SMB, but no matter. With a technology that's so old, obviously it leaves plenty of room. I mean, 40 years, that's plenty of time for researchers to interact with the technology, to poke around, to look for weaknesses, to make the technology even better. I believe we're sitting at version 3.1 of SMB. I could be wrong. I found another page that's going through the iterations of SMB. It's been round the block, and over the years, researchers have found all sorts of weaknesses that's been explored in all sorts of way. The most infamous or famous, depending on which side of the spectrum you are, the most commonly known. How about that? Let's use that. The most commonly known exploit is Eternal Blue. If you remember Eternal Blue, it becomes part of a set of exploits that were leaked, a set of exploits that were held very securely by the NSA until somebody decided, nope, they're going to let all those exploits be known to the internet. And then, of course, because of that, we have had the Sons of Eternal Blue. You know, we had Eternal Romance, Eternal Champion. Some of them I didn't even realize that they had names. Eternal Rocks, we never heard of it. So there's a whole gamut of exploits that have since been replaced. It doesn't make SMB bad. It just means that over the years it's been improved to the extent that it's still available on the networks today. So SMB is not going away. It's been around for 40 years. Maybe when everybody has migrated to the cloud, it might go away. So far, though, not so much. It's still around. So you'll always be asked to come to make an assessment of an internal network. And as you will see here today, SMB is going to be the gift that keeps giving. That's because it's all over. You can't avoid it. And more often than not, when you want to do lateral movement, you're going to be looking for the kind of vectors that SMB makes available to us, and we're going to explore some of them here. All right. So yeah, so stick around. Let's do that. So today we'll basically be doing file shares. Today's video is likely going to be long because I want to do both enumeration with file shares, as well as we'll try a bit of a cable roasting today. So the video is going to be a little bit long. Okay, you still with me? I hope so. All right, now we need to switch back to our screen. I believe that is option 2, so that we go to our terminal. All right, let's just verify. Yes, we're back on the terminal. If you think about it, we've already started interacting with SMB. Remember the previous video that we've done? If you remember, what we did there is we did what is called a null session enumeration. And that is when you walk up to a server and say, hello, server, can you give me a list of your resources, please? And then in this case, you're talking about a list of users. Using null sessions, using a misconfiguration that one of these boxes had. You remember, only one box allowed us to do this null session. It was Winterfell. We walked up to Winterfell and we said, hello, we want to offer you no username and password, but please can you give us a list of usernames? And it obliged us. In fact, it gave us one user with a password, not because the tool itself has this magical ability to give us the password. No, it's because somebody who had set up their account made a mistake. When they set up their account, they went and set up their account and they put a password somewhere in one of the descriptive fields. That's definitely a no-no. You do not do that. And that's what happened. And that's how we have our first set of credentials. If you remember, I keep my notes on Obsidian Notes, and the first set of creds that we discover there is Samuel Tally. We will be discovering other creds. It's just that today the only creds that we have so far are those for Samuel Tally, and we're going to be using those creds to see how we can do further enumeration, how we can do this is this lateral movement you hear people speaking about, where you use a little bit of information to discover some of the information, and you discover, using this newly discovered information, you enumerate some more to discover even more information. Okay, so that's the continuous loop. You'll find it's a continuous theme within Active Directory pen testing. You'll find a little bit of information, and you find ways in which you can use this little bit of information to your advantage to enumerate some more. Okay, all right, so let's get back to our screen. Let's remind ourselves the IP addresses and host names. If you remember, we've got the main box being King's Landing, and then we've got the others: Winterfell, Marine, Castle Black, and Bravos. Okay, and we interacted a little bit with Winterfell, and that's when we were able to do a null session, and On Winterfell, we were able to find the credits for Samuel Tally. So what we're going to do now is to see how can we use the credits for Samuel Tally to do further enumeration. Okay. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to see, because we're talking about SMB, right? So we're talking about file shares. So we want to know what file shares are available across the network. Okay, so we can use that using SMBclient. There is a command in SMBclient, as I look for it here, that enable us to list those clients. So the way that I've copied the command, already targeting Winterfell.11, but I just want to show you what it looks like when you use those creds across all the boxes. So we're going to supply Samuel Tally's credentials across the boxes to ask all the boxes, tell me what shares are available right across, okay, so that we can see if we can connect to any of them and discover something useful. Okay, so the first box we're going to do that with is the main one. So let's do that. And immediately it tells us, go away. Those credits are not good here. Those creds are not good here. Great. So we move on. We'll come back to 11 because I can tell you now that's where we'll find some joy. But I just want you to see what happens when we try the same creds on the other boxes. We go to 12. 12 says those creds are not good here. Those creds are not good in marine. Samuel Tally has nothing to do with marine. Okay, all right, you say fine. Let's leave the domain controllers alone. Let's go to Bravos. And okay, the Bravos, can Samuel Tally log in? Samuel Tally can log on onto Bravos. And Samuel Tally can have access to that share there, that share there, and that share there. All right. So let's remember that. Okay. So let's go and have a look at 22. On 22, Samuel Tally can log on there as well. And even there, he's got read-write access on a share called all. He's got read-write access. No, he's got read access on a share called public. Okay. So we've seen on 23 he's got access, on 22 he's got access. Those are the two machines that are not domain controllers. If you remind ourselves what those machines are, on Bravos he can log on, he can view some shares. On 22 he can log on, he can view some shares. He wasn't allowed on 12. He wasn't allowed on the main 110. And let's see, let's do 10 again. And let's see what shares are available on 11. Okay. On 11, the shares look slightly different. There aren't all, if we scroll back, the shares that were available on the non-domain controller boxes, they look much similar. They both had public. They both had all. Only one of them had cert and role. I imagine this has something to do with Active Directory certificate services. I do know there is a vector that includes that. We won't cover that in that video, and that's why we're conveniently overlooking it. I also didn't speak about these shares with dollar signs. Those shares, you normally don't have access to them unless you have gained full administrator access. So I'm pretending they're not there now because we still don't have any admin access across those. So yeah, so the two non-domain controller machines. They've got shares that look like that. We couldn't get access on .10. On 12, what was the result on 12? On 12, we couldn't get access either. So we couldn't get access on the two domain controllers. But on 11, we've got access. Now I'm choosing to go into the Active Directory controller first before the other file servers, not because of anything else. Yes, this is a lab, and to save time, I'm going to suggest that we go to the domain controller. But think of it logically. What's a high value target between an active domain controller and a machine that is not an active domain controller? It's obviously the active domain controller is a higher value target. And if there's going to be a share in an active domain controller, I'm going to look there first. It's still worth looking in the other places, but for the sake of time, I'm going to ask that we look into the active domain controller first. We'll still look at the others. I'll show you how, but let's look at the active domain controller. All right. So let's clear our screen. We already know that we're going to be looking at 11, so let's do that again. And now we want to have a look at the first share being sysvol. All right, so now I'm going to copy a command that lets us see what's in sysvol. If my mouse works, if my mouse doesn't work very well, copy, paste. Okay, there you go. So we're telling it, previously this is what we did. We just said list. Now we're not listing anymore. Now we just want to connect. We're giving it the server IP address, and we're giving it the name of the share, and we're giving it the creds. And then notice our prompt has changed. So that means that we are fully logged on. You can type the question mark to see a list of commands usable. For me, the most useful command there, in fact, I believe there is, okay, there's many, but the most useful one for our purposes is obviously going to be ls for listing the files that are available there. It says there's a directory called north.7kingdoms.local. So we say change directory, we hit the tab key for completion, and it doesn't oblige us. My goodness, are we? Let's see. Should we be typing this out? North.7kingdoms.local. Yes. I'm surprised it doesn't do tab completion. And under north.7kingdoms.local, there's 3 folders. There's one called DFSR private, DFSR. Does do tab completion? Yes, it does. Then it says access denied. It doesn't want this there. So that leaves us with policies and scripts. So we change directory to policies. We do an ls, if I can type, and then we found those folders there. I hope you are starting to get my misgivings. If you have picked up that I actually have got misgivings with this command, trust me, it's a useful command. It allows us to navigate folder shares, but I'm not a fan of SMBclient. Okay, I'll tell you what I like. I like a command called impact at SMBclient. Okay, so this one is sort of like a generic tool. I don't know who made this one, but I like the impact tools better because I think those tools were made with pen testers in mind. So what do I mean? Let me copy the impact version. There's the impact version. We're logging back to the same server again. The prompt has changed. Remember the old one, the prompt once you've logged on, it just said SMB, and this one it's just giving you that hash. So what do you do once you've logged in? Again, question mark, will it give you a list of commands? Yes, it does. But what we need here, we can't do just an ls because it's going to tell us, well, you have to select a share. But how do you know what shares are? There's two ways we could do that. We could scroll back with our screen and remember that there's two shares called sysvol and netlogon and all these others. Or if you remember, we did do a question mark to see a bunch of commands that are available. There's a useful command there called shares. So we type shares, and then it gives us exactly that list that we saw when we use SMBclient. There's admin $IPC. None of those are available to us because we're not admins. And then there's not logon and sysvol. We were in sysvol, and so we say use sysvol. Does it do tab completion? No, it does not. And now we're in sysvol, even though we don't get that confirmation, we're in sysvol. Let's do an ls, and then we find that folder S before. Does it do tab completion? Yes, it does, but it's not the reason why I came, or it's not the number one reason why I wanted to switch clients. Instead of using SMBclient, I wanted to use in-packet SMBclient, and the number one reason for that is I'm lazy. I don't want to be typing cd tab complete going to the folder. So I don't want to do that. So I want to show you a command called tree. Now, when you do tree, instead of walking down the folders yourself individually, you can basically list everything that's available there and decide for yourself what looks interesting to you. Now, this is a lab. They do want to save us time. So somebody, thank you, Mayfly, somebody did us a favor to save us time and say, you know what? I'm actually going to create a file for you called secrets. So I can tell you now, because I've done this before while practicing before doing the video, I can tell you that's the file we're looking for. But in your normal course of making an assessment in Active Directory, of making an Active Directory assessment, you would typically be given so many days to do it. And so your enumeration will in part be informed by how much time you've got. The smarter the tools you've got to perform a particular function, the better things will be for you. Option one would, of course, be walking each one of these directories individually. But option two would be finding a smarter tool to do it. In this case, the smarter tool is tree. There's actually a much better tool that I'll show you in a moment. But the smarter tool here to save time is tree, and it's the one that enabled us to at least give us a file that inspires curiosity among us. So we decide we want that particular folder. So what are we going to do? We copy that file name. We're simply going to say get that file there. Does it do paste? Looks like I'm not doing paste. Yes, it does. Okay. The tool needs some work. There's no progress bar. There's no feedback mechanism to tell you that what you've just downloaded is anywhere. You're just getting your prompt back. But trust me, there is something there. I'm going to exit and do an ls, and I'm expecting to see a file called secrets.ps1, and I find a file called secret.ps1. Let's have a look at it. What is a secret? I'm going to use nano, or you can even cat it if you want. And there's nothing there. So my guess was not correct. So we go back. I did make an error. That's not the file I had intended. But it's good because now it gives us a chance for me to go look for the file that I wanted originally. So I'm going to say use sysvol. I'm going to do the tree command again. And I'm going to look for script. I'm actually doing this video outside. I needed to do some air. It's September and the windy season is quite late, and the wind outside here is yeah, it's going to be a challenge. I might have to pause and move inside if it gets a little bit loud. But yeah, anyway, let's come and get that command there called scripts, because we already have secret. Copy, paste. Yeah, that's what we want. And we exit and we list the files. I now have two. I've got secret and I've got script. We had a look at secret. We found no creds there. I know I exited that nano screen very quickly because I knew what I was looking for, because I had seen it before. But normally you'd go through that PowerShell script to have a look what it's doing, and then you'd realize actually there is no cred there. So let's have a look at script. And script has creds for us for Geo Momont. Geo Momont, if you follow the series, he was actually the master of Castle Black. So I do anticipate him to be an administrator or an elevated user on Castle Black. We'll have a look. Okay. So you copy that, and as I keep saying, oh no, let me just you can copy that. Don't want to make changes to this file, no, but I just want to show you that once you grab the credentials, you just copy them and then you save them on my if you remember, we use Obsidian to keep our notes. So I have already done that. I've already copied the creds for Geo Moment and I've put them there. Great. Great stuff. Congratulations, we've done that. The question is, well, what do we do with those creds? So remember what I said earlier, that often this discovery process, you are iterating. We now have two creds. The first creds, you were able to do certain things, and we're going to hope that with these creds, we'll be able to do even more things. Okay. Right. Let's clear the screen. I want to show you something quickly. Let's step back a little bit. Earlier, we only had the creds for Samuel Tally. And now we've got creds for Geo Moment. When we had the creds for Samuel Tally, I showed you how you can make your way through the shares using the command SMBclient. Okay, so if you remember, we just scroll back. We said SMBclient, can you list me shares when the username I've got is Samuel Tally and husband? Okay, if you recall, we sent that request to the main box, being King's Landing. King's Landing says sorry. And then we went to Winterfell. Winterfell said sure. With those creds, we have access to some shares. And then we went to Marine. Marine said you can't use those creds to log anything here. And then we went to Castle Black. Castle Black says sure, those creds you can log on. And then finally, we went to Bravos, and Bravos said, yeah, Bravos said, yeah, sure, I can show you some creds. Sure, this tool works, but I want us to remember that 2 boxes wouldn't give us any love, okay? And if you remember well, that was the main box and marine. Okay, now let's use the same commands. That's same commands, but using the newly discovered credentials. And those are, sorry about that. And those are, just hold on a second. Yeah, and those are for GeoMoment. So I'm going to remember we've recently discovered this on that PowerShell script. GeoMoment. Moment. And the password is Longclaw. Okay. Oh, it didn't like something that I've done. Oh, I know what I've done. I've used colon instead of a percentage sign. There you go. It still says no game. I don't want you here. Okay. And now let's try the 12. Still says I don't want you here. I just want to check something quickly. I'm actually surprised by that because I would have thought that your moment would be able to log on. Ah, I know why. Sometimes it's important to specify the domain you're coming from. That did the trick. That did the trick. So now when I use the domain information, then it says, sure, you can have a look. I now want to do the same thing that I've done to see whether it would have honored Samuel Telly's Samuel Tally. That's been. Actually, yes. So sometimes it's important how you log on. Okay, so that was the 10. And let's try Marine. Marine says, no, I don't care. You coming in with an Active Directory account or you coming in with a local account. I don't want you here. And that is important. That is important when you do your enumeration around an Active Directory, and that the tool that you use, or does it know where the creds are coming from? Are you logging in with a local account or are you logging in with a domain account? Okay, so that becomes very important. Here we've discovered something very important. You'll discover that when you want to log on to this wind, I'm gonna need to move. The point I want to make is it's important as you navigate between the resources it's important to be mindful of the context in which you're logging in. Are you logging in with a workstation username, or are you logging in with a domain account? Right now, though, I'm going to pack up and go back inside because the Windows blew these monitors off. So I'm going to pause. In fact, I'm going to stop it all together, and then I will stitch it all together so that I'm able to continue where I left off. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit a pause for now. The next time you see the video, I'll be indoors. Okay. All right, so let's just stop. Okay, and we are back. Just before I moved into the house, I was explaining about how it's important as you go, as you do your lateral movement, as you switch the accounts, as you test which account is applicable where, it's important that you keep in mind in which context you're trying to log on to the resource. As we have seen here, previously we had tried to log on to someone tally on King's Landing, and this is how we try to log on. That was the command that we ran in order to list what shares are available onto that specific host .10. We did it this way, and it said, sorry, NT status logon failure. I do not know who you are. We gave up and we moved on. But what we didn't do is to keep in mind in which context we are logging in. So what we needed to do is to modify the SMBclient command to include the domain information, to say we're coming from the domain north, and if there is a trust relationship between the two domains, that being north.7kingdoms.local and the domain in which that particular host .10 belongs, which is 7kingdoms.local, if there's a trust relationship between the two, then I'll be able to at least log on. And when I do that, indeed it allows me to log on and see that in fact I've got access to NetLogon and Sysvol. Okay, so I hadn't considered that before I started making the video. So what I do want to do though is to have a look, well, what is on Sysvol. Actually, I'm going to use Mpacket. I'm going to use Mpacket. There you go. And you're trying to log on to .10 because you're logging in with North. That should log us in. Yes, it does. And then we go to shares, and then it tells us NetLogon and Sysvol are available. And then we say use Sysvol. I suppose we're there, and then we try to do an ls. Okay, it did let us log on, but it did let us see that there's a shell called Sysvol, but we actually have no access to it. But it was important to demonstrate the point anyway. So let's try NetLogon. We're in NetLogon. And let's try and list. And again, it says you may be able to log on to the share, but that account, someone entirely has got no rights to list anything. Okay, so it was important to show that. And I think the other server or the other domain controller that wouldn't let us in, I believe, was 12. Let's try that. 12. But now we're going to try and log on without the domain information. I've done something wrong. Let's try that again. Oh, yes, I didn't specify which share. So now I'm just saying, just list what shares are available. Remember, we tried to do that with no domain context, and now when we put in the domain context, is it backslash or forward slash? It's forward slash. Okay, so now if you put on the domain context, with the domain context, it says, all right, fine, I will let you list. Now let's try to log on. Net log on. Net log on. We're there. Can we list? Of course we can list. Oh, okay. Of course I can list, but there's nothing to list. There's no shared folders on that particular share. So that was net log on. Let's try sysvol. I don't know if it's case sensitive or not, but we're just trying here. We are logged on. We ls. Sure enough, there's usource.local. And we ls again. Again, we see DFS private policies and scripts. So we're going to do what we did with Impacket. We're going to log out of here, go to Impacket SMBclient to log on to the same domain. And then we're specifying the username as that's the username. We're specifying the domain information. It lets us log in, and then we say shares, and then we say use sysvol, and then we say treat because we don't want to go there manually. I don't see anything particularly juicy here. Had I used SMBclient and not the Impacket one, I would need to walk all these folders manually. We all know we do not have access to DFSR private. We have access to policies, and that's what it's showing us here, but we do not have access to scripts. Okay, great. So that is the difference between SMBclient and Impacket SMBclient. And as we've just learned, it is important that as we log on here, we keep in mind in which context that we're trying to log on to those servers. All right. We're not done. We have more to discover from SMB shares. Okay, so let's exit here for a while. There is one more tool that I want to show you that is absolutely brilliant in my opinion. Now you can imagine in this lab, depending on which lab you're running, you might be running the 3-host game of Active Directory. You might be running the 5-host one. You've got a little bit of more memory and you're running the 5-host one. It's still a small number. It's just 5. Okay. So you can imagine having to be asked to come into the organization and they've got tens of this server or hundreds of these servers. How much time do you have, even when we use Impacket version of SMBclient, how much time do you have to really walk all of them one by one? It's you don't have enough time. Remember, when you get asked to come to an organization to come and do an assessment, usually it's over a limited period. Some organizations do not have time for a pen tester to come through and spend an eternity looking for vulnerabilities. That's what we prefer as pen testers, of course, as evaluators, as system auditors. We prefer having unlimited time to find as many bugs, to find as many bad things as possible into the organization. But in reality, the organization will say, I'm giving you a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And besides, the pen testing shop, the consulting agency itself, may not have that time to give an organization 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever it is. It all goes with the negotiation, the budget, and whatnot. What I'm trying to communicate is because of the limited time, you might want to use the best available tool. Of course, there are some commercial ones. I'm going to let you know about a tool that's available right here on Kali, and I'm talking about NetExec. NetExec has taken over from CredMapExec, if you remember CredMapExec. So it's basically the same thing. It's been forked. It's now called NetExec, and the original developer has moved on to other things. Thank you, Marcelo. Yeah, so it's got new maintainers now. It's been forked. It's been improved. It's doing so many things. And I want to show you how that tool could be used. Imagine this scenario like we have here. We've got 5 hosts. We've got a set of creds. We want to test those creds across as many workstations as possible. The tool that I'm going to show you now, it allows you to do that very, very quickly. Okay, so here we are. So let me clear the screen. Now let me just zoom in a little bit. Thank you, John. So it's NXC SMB because, that's the protocol that we're using. And we know that all our hosts, they're sitting on that network there. Initially, we're going to offer no context. We're just going to say Samuel Telly. Hot Spain. Okay. And then we're going to let it rip just to see. Let's let it rip. So it's a little bit too big. Let us reduce the size here. And then it tells us that, well, on Winterfell, Samuel Telly is valid. On Castle Black, Samuel Telly is valid. That makes sense. They're both north. But what is curious here is that even on Bravos, a different domain called esos.local, Samuel Telly has got some level of access. Now let's try the newly discovered creds for a moment. And the password there is long claw. And we do the same. And GeoMoment can also log on to Bravos, Winterfell, and Castle Black. And interestingly, GeoMoment and Castle Black, he's the administrator. All right. Which means you can log on to that particular host and go crazy and dump all the shares for everybody that might be registered there. So it's a powerful, powerful tool. Okay. That's not all you can use the tool for. I've just showed you how to use the tool to test it against all the hosts to see where are those creds valid. And we've just discovered that we can use the tool NXC to discover the hosts in which those creds give you admin access. In this particular case, GeoMoment is the admin of Castle Black. And with those creds come all sorts of goodies that you can do with them. We're not going to get into it in this video. We're just showing you what you can do with SMB. Yeah, so that's what you can do. There's one more thing that NXC or NetExec will enable us to do. NXC can actually walk all the shares for us, all the shares across all the hosts. So which means you don't have to individually log on to every machine with SMBclient. You list the shares, you connect to the share, you start walking the share one by one. That takes time. What NetExec can do is to do everything all at once. Okay, so I've got that command. NetExec has got a module called Spider Plus that you can use to enable you to do that. So we're just gonna do a previous command like that. Then we're going to say module Spider Plus to say go everywhere with those creds. Okay, let's see. It's done. Now what it's doing is when you scroll back, it says it logged on successfully on .11 and everything that it has found is on that folder there. It did the same for Castle Black. Everything that it had found is still on the same folder. So if we navigate to that folder, we should be able to find some nice goodies there. So I'm going to copy that folder there, change director to that folder. Let's see what we've got. It's telling us that it's been able to log on successfully with those shares, with those creds across all those. And the biggest among those files is .11. So let's just have a look. Come on. Oh my goodness, I need a good mouse. Whoa, okay. So that is fantastic. We see that it logged on to the sysvault share, it logged on to the netlogon share, and these are the files that it discovered. The registry poll. If any of those look interesting, then one can manually go in there and have a look. So we have a look there. We've already discovered those two files, the script and the secret. Remember, that's where Cholo Momon's credentials are. Okay, so that's on .11. All right, .12, there's something there as well. On .12, it's on the netlogon share, nothing was found, but on the sysvault share, as we walk through there is nothing really interesting. Okay, that's good. On 22, there's a share called all, and under all, there's a file there called aria. All right. So now it's a good idea for us to access the old share on 22. What's 22? Let's go and cat our host file again to remind us what's 22. 22 is Castle Black. So on Castle Black, there's a file called aria.txt, and then it's on the all share. So what do? We can go back to Spider Plus. There's an option to say, just reminding myself what the option is, just visiting my notes. There's an optional flag called download flag true, and then you run the same command again. And then what it will do is, as we navigate back to that folder, okay, we're actually in Spider Plus already. So when we do an ls, and we go to 22, 2. Okay, it's telling us that on the all share, there's a folder called aria, and when we cat what's inside of that file, we see a note. It says subject, hey Ira, from John. It says, hi Ira, I hope this message finds you well. Something urgent has come up and I have to leave for a while. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. I left a little surprise for you in your room. The sword you've named Needle. It felt fitting, given your skills. Take care of it. It'll take care of you. I'll explain everything when I return. Until then, stay sharp, sis. That is a nice touch. That is, if you've done capture the flags, you will notice that what we have here is a hint. Okay, it's a hint. Also, if you've watched the game of Active Directory, you will realize how special that needle is. Okay, so needle was a sword that belonged to Arya, and it was very special sword to Arya. What are the chances that that's a password? Okay, so what we need to do is, we haven't come across the creds for Aria. So what we need to do is just to remind ourselves what the username for Aria looks like. I remember we did that with Enum for Linux. So just to quickly remind ourselves what the username for Aria is, 6.11, not .1, sorry, .11. So Aria, there's a username for Aria. Okay, so we now know there's a username, and now we want to test those creds. We can use NXC now. Okay, so from now on moving forward, you're going to be using NXC. So we can say -u. Did I copy it? No, I did not. Stock NSP needle without the full stop. It's using the SMB module, and everywhere. Are those creds available or valid anywhere among the 5 hosts? We remove the 1. Right, we say NXC, we're using the SMB module, and then we're saying look at the 56 network, see whether the creds ARIA stack with password needle are valid anywhere. Okay, execute. Success. It says on Winterfell those creds are valid, on Castle Black those creds are valid, and on Bravos those creds are valid. Okay, and so that gives us the 3rd set of creds that are available. Okay, so as I do this, I'm updating the notes to say that explains those creds there. Now, when you look at my notes, you will see that there's more creds to be discovered, but the technique for doing that is something we're yet to speak about in the next video, called AS setup roasting, NTLM poisoning, and KB roasting. For now, though, since the video was specifically targeting SMB, we're going to end there. I think this is the longest video that I've done so far. So I'm going to try as much as possible to edit it, cut all the dead spaces to make the video short. But I don't think there's a way I could ever make the video short. But remember, this is a video for beginners. All you experienced guys, I do thank you for visiting me. But I think to help the guys at the beginning, I had to be as slow as possible. If you're still here, I'm grateful that you chose to stay this long and watch. I'm going to ask you to please like, subscribe, and share this video to anyone else that might benefit from this content. Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you on the next one when we discuss AS rep roasting and NTLM poisoning. Thank you.